Everything. Make sure this is on. Oh, so where are you from? Where are you calling?
I'm from Katy, Texas.
Texas. Cool. I'm
Yeah.
actually gonna be there in next month. I have a wedding to go to in Dallas. So
Oh, okay, nice.
all right, cool. So why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself? Tell me like where you're at sort of in design or in your career. And we can go over any work or any kind of questions you have after that.
Cool. Yeah, so I got a degree from the Art Institute for graphic design. And I took like one photography class in there, and I really love photography. And so I started working at like a t-shirt shop while I was um in school, and then I found the job that I'm currently at, which is like editing photos for a real estate company. And my side projects like helping out the graphic designers there because we have two on staff. Um, so I've been photo editing for about like 6 years now. And I've always had a passion for graphic design. I think where I was at that real estate, or not the real estate, the retail store, I think the management just ruined my passion for graphic design. In the everyday, like I guess maybe the clientele did too. I just I don't know, dealing with people was just not my strong suit. And people's designs like that they have in their head or that are like pixelated when they come in and stuff like that. Um, so I'm applying right now to different graphic design jobs. Um, and I have a portfolio that most of that stuff is like from school. I've added some stuff recently, um, but yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at right now.
All right. Okay. Why don't you, I think you can share screen. Let me just make sure. Yeah, you can share screen. So why don't you share your screen and then you put together like a portfolio and then like I was just looking at your website. So whatever you want to go through first.
Okay.
Um, and then we can kind of talk about like the things that you're applying for and like what you're kind of seeing currently.
So this is my graphic design. Let me go back. This is all the like photo retouching work I've done for clients. Okay.
Mm,
So that was like my main website. That's how I attracted most of my photo editing clients and things like that. Um, and I mean, I've built a kind of good business out of it. Um, but that's a side business, and I want to do graphic design as like my career. Um, and so this is my graphic design portfolio that I send. Like this is what's on my resume.
okay.
So recently, the reason I have this, like these up here, is because I have an interview for a graphic design job at Alpha Lead. So they didn't ask me to, but I just made some work so that they could see what I'm capable of. Um, I also have these that I've made just recently for them. Again, they didn't ask me to. I'm not so sure if they're going to take kindly to this because this is their photographer's work. Um, so I basically just like took it, and designed over it. So we'll see. But I just wanted to show them like what I'm capable of as far as like taking their photos and stuff.
Okay. So it sounds like you have the interview at Alpha League.
I do, but I've also had 3 or 4 other interviews, and I don't know how to say this, but like I know one person, not personally know them, but I've seen their portfolio that got hired. And I mean, comparatively, I don't know. I don't want to sound like a
I get what
dick.
you're saying. I get it. I get it. I get it. But they got the job.
Correct.
Okay, so you're making it past step one of like, okay, they see your work, but then something's going wrong. And I think my assumption is that like so how much, what is it about graphic design that you want to do? Like, what is it, what part of it, or what is it that you'd like of it
I really am drawn to layout design.
to lay out? Okay.
Whether that's like any kind of like social media layout, like ad layout, design, like print design or anything like that. I'm really drawn to like those kinds, like just layout design. Um,
Mhm.
I I touched my feet in logo design. It's just not, that's not entertaining to me, and I don't feel like I'm good at it. Um, I feel like taking, I mean, I tried UI UX a little bit. I'm okay with that. Um, I have a little bit on my portfolio down here from school. I feel like I'm good at taking what's already there and reimagining it.
Okay. I'm just gonna flat out, what if I were to tell you you shouldn't be a graphic designer? Would you think I'm crazy?
No,
not
I
not
wouldn't.
because of any reason, but listen. It's not because of any reason, because I think like skill wise or anything like that. But you coming to me and having this experience in like photo editing, you know imagery, right? Like, before we even talk anything about that, like I'm just assuming that you know imagery, know how to work with photo, you know how to editorialize things, right? Obviously, editorial spaces was kind of like your idea to bring that vision to life a bit. Again, this is all assumption, so we can go back and unpack this.
Okay.
But now you want to like take that skill and use it in other ways, right? Which let me maybe retract my statement. Sure, like you're moving on to design and you want to be able to kind of combine information with that imagery and loving that process. And to me, it kind of brings me to this idea that like, yes, you want to design, but you're also kind of like an art director in a sense, because you have that eye for imagery for brands and how like things may work and how to also inform design what you've done with sort of the Alpha Elite stuff that you've just put up.
Mm-hmm.
Now you can tell me what you think about that. We can go back and unpack it like each part, because I think there's something interesting with kind of like the predicament that you're coming up upon.
So I would like to say the photo stuff. I took that job because I wanted a way out of where I was graphic designing. Um, and then I really started to like it, and I stayed with the company, and the company was growing and things like that. And then when COVID hit, I was like, okay, I'm already really good at editing photos, and I already know real estate. So I will just reach out to some like photographers that shoot architectural and interior design and go from there, because I needed a, like, my wife wasn't working as much, so I just needed a secondary income source. So I kind of like, I love it. It's a little bit monotonous because it's the same thing every time. Um, like, yeah, you see unique rooms and stuff like that, but it's the same. I have a style, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, I feel like I feel like I edit everything the same way, and it gets good results, but I like structure, but I'm looking for a little bit more creativity in my work.
Okay.
Do I like creating every day? No. My brain gets burned out on that. You know what I mean?
Uh, so what do you think? What do you think went wrong with like the previous interviews? Like tell me about like maybe one or two. Like, were they specific to graphic design roles? Were they like what were the kind of questions they were asking you? Like, kind of walk me through one or two of them.
Personally, what I think really went wrong was, so I always like, after the interview phase, they just didn't pick me. You know what I mean? So I was like, maybe it's me as a person, and I'm not good at talking. Um, I'm not that great at talking like to people and expressing my ideas and stuff. But I think now that I like have gone through 2 or 3 kind of corporate interviews, um, I'm not sure if corporate's the right path. Um, because I had one yesterday or the day before, and I was like, so all this stuff is just templated. And she's like, yeah, you're just throwing in numbers into InDesign. That's it. While that sounds fun, that doesn't sound stimulating enough. And so, and I also really love sports. So I think that's where, like, I was doing sports photography for a little bit, and I love hooking my passion for sports, since I'm like getting older and can't play. Obviously, I'm not like an NFL player, you know? So like hooking sports, and like I really love sports. I really love, I guess, photography and graphic design hooked with sports together. You know what I mean?
Dude, you're an art director, 100%. Like,
But I don't know. I don't know what that means. I don't have enough experience for that, because they require like 10,000 plus years.
well, this is the thing, right? So you're in a situation where you're going for design jobs, kind of under, not I want to say under the guise, but like they're gonna look at you as a graphic designer, and that's fine, right? Like, I get what you're saying. Like, you don't have experience as an art director. You kind of do, and that's part of like this whole creative career. I find is that you kind of just need to start saying the thing that you do, even if you don't have that kind of like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I had a role as an art director at a company, right? Like, it's gonna be it's hard, right? And I think even when I was interviewing at my last couple of jobs, like, I didn't have a team necessarily, but I did work with like 3 or 4 contractors that essentially were my augmented team. So in a way, yeah, my title didn't say like I was the leader of this team or whatever, but I was managing 3 people.
Mhm.
So when I went into interviews, I would make sure that I would call that out as like, yeah, I've been managing 3 people. They're freelancers. They don't have, like, the company doesn't want to hire for the budget, whatever it may be, but
Mhm.
I've done. So I have leadership experience. Like, boom, there it is. And so I kind of challenge you to like think about like, yeah, I was a photo editor, but I was then also like kind of combining it with the thought of design. And that is where like the art direction kind of comes in. Now, what I'm guessing might be the problem with some of these interviews is that they're really trying to come at you as like you've only done graphic design, and like, that's it, like you're a graphic designer, kind of like that idea that you're saying is that like, well, I've never had a title, technically called this or that, so
But
therefore brain malfunctions.
I mean, I'm gonna agree with everything you're saying, and also add on to that they're coming at me like, I feel like they're coming at it like, you've been editing for like photo editing for 6 years. Why are you applying for a graphic design position? Like, I've done graphic design in those 6 years. It hasn't been like, my title is digital media coordinator, so it doesn't say graphic designer or photo editor, but so I have the experience in all those fields. I don't know.
You need to unpack exactly what you just said in the interview. Like the way you've mentioned that, like, yeah, I've been doing photo editing for so long, and after a while, like I got really good at it and I wanted to learn more. You need to present it as like an opportunity for like your kind of own like self-discovery, but also for them in the sense that you have ambition to then want to go and learn another field. Right. So for like Alphalete, right, if we kind of analyze it through the same idea of like you've been having trouble with traditional graphic design jobs, you need to kind of present to them as like, yeah, I have been in this photo editing position for the last 6 years. The last 3 years or X amount of years have been me photo editing and also working with the design team, cranking out designs and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because now I've moved on from mastering the look and feel of this brand or this company to also understand how it would best be to editorialize it with design. And that's why I've moved into more, or wanting to move more into a graphic design role, because I've been doing that for X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah,
that's how I think like the opportunity is like way more presentable, because then you're, instead of like trying to back yourself into a corner of your reasoning of graphic design, you've already made it known that like you've moved on from learning one thing and being really good at it to then moving on to another thing and also wanting to be really good at that.
yeah.
Like when you're in that conversation, they ask you like, well, what have you been doing? If you've been photo editing for 6 years, like it almost gives them that idea that like this is something you've done on the side, like outside of your job. Whereas if you tell them straight up, yeah, like I've got so good at it that I could then move on to this one thing, and obviously like phrase it a little bit better, but just to kind of hit on it.
Yeah.
I've gotten so good at this one thing. I moved on to being really good at this other thing, and so now I want to combine those in a new role for a company like Alphalete. Like, that's going to be way better than you backing in them asking the question like, well, where did you learn design? Like you're going to start to scramble.
Yeah, and I feel like, so I have the interview with the she's the lead photographer, I guess. I don't know if she's the only one. But she is the like lead photographer, so she's taking on a hiring manager or whatever. And I feel like where I wanted to go, like in that conversation, was just like, I know photography and I know graphic design, and I know that there's a huge amount of potential in combining photography and graphic design. Like the ideas and stuff like that, it's just like, it's a plethora, because there's like a million ideas of photography and a million ideas of graphic design. And there's like, you know what I mean? You just like square them two, and there's like, I don't know.
Yes.
See, I can't like express my words good enough.
Yeah. So it's great that you mentioned that you're going to be interviewing with the photographer, right? Or someone in the photo department. So maybe
Mhm.
they already have this kind of scheme in their head where they're like, this guy has a good eye for design and good eye for photography. Maybe we can make this work, which I
Mhm.
think that could be one scenario, right? The other
Right.
scenario is that like they're expecting you to be full on graphic designer. And again, you want to be humble because you're speaking to the photo person. So it may be their work. You don't want to come off as like, yeah, I've mastered photography, whatever. You want to be like,
Yeah,
I've
no, I
really
mean,
come to understand what can work well once I learn the brand and like understand from the team what, like, you want to consider all of that, right?
yeah.
And then also mention like, yes, I would love to work at a place like Alphalete because I see so much opportunity to elevate the photography with design and how we could potentially editorialize it better to make like to be noticed more or something
Mhm.
like that. Like it is a walk for sure, but it is never like I've gotten so good, and now I just want to be good at your place. It's like I can see the opportunity for my skills to add to what you guys are already doing and make it
Yeah.
better.
Yeah. I mean, her work is just, it's stunning in a different way. Um, and I mean, obviously I'm not gonna, I don't think I'm got that like as good as her. And I also am not gonna go into that interview saying like I'm good. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Um,
But I mean, it's good that you have this admiration. You should even definitely mention that of like, I've seen your work before. I've definitely admired it, whatever in whatever way you want to phrase it. But it's good to know that people are already engaged, not only with like the brand level, but like the work level. Like that already shows that you're kind of like on top of what they're doing, paying attention, and being able to like really show an affinity for this company.
yeah, I tend to hyper fixate on things until like it's done. So like ever since I got this interview, that's what I've been doing on YouTube. I talked to her husband, because he posted like a video or something, and I was like, it's truly like really inspirational and stuff like that. And at the time I didn't know it was her husband. And then the recruitment place said that you're going to be meeting with her, and I was like, oh my gosh, she has a same last name. Like it's a photographer and a videographer, like husband and wife team, you know?
That's
Yeah, so I was like, geez, like did I mess that up? Or but anyway, um I don't know
That's
where I was going
awesome.
with that.
Wait, I know Alphalete. I was thinking of Gymshark, but I know Alphalete. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's cool. Um,
it's really cool, and it's also my dream job.
well, you want to make sure that they understand that in a way like you already kind of love the everything about the company. Not
Hmm.
so much the dream job part. You never want to mention like, I'll let you determine that. It's a temperature read, but at the same time, it's like it's never wrong to be like, yeah, well, one, you don't want to be obsessive. You don't want to come off as obsessive.
Right, like a fanboy.
You do want to show that you like really admire the brand, you've loved, X, Y, and Z, and thought that this was really creative. Like you want to show those examples, like
Hmm.
those little kind of like bits of like, oh yeah, I remember when you guys did this, and I thought it was really great, or but not too over the top. I
Right.
mean, all that stuff is good. And again, like I think your advantage, you need to keep this in mind, is that like you have that sort of duo skill hybrid of like, yeah, I can help out in design, I can help out, I could do photography, I can like combine those together and kind of be like the key or like the sort of middleman between those two teams if needed, or however they want to like present the position to you. I think that's also key, is that you ask at some point, like, what is this role like specifically going to be doing? And that's going to help you again to like understand which direction you need to take in terms of like mentioning your experience.
Yeah. And I think like I didn't mention I've also done like videography in there. At this job, I kind of built the videography department until we had like a videographer, and I've been managing a team of like 3 to 4 photographers since like a year or two after I got there, so it's been a little bit, and I have a hard time saying like it's literally been a little bit of everything since I've been there, you know.
I think of it as like you want to mention those at the right points. You don't want to mention all of that up front entirely.
Yeah.
For example, like when I got my job at Pepsi, it was partially because of this reason of that I've worked in video, I've worked in digital, and I have good branding and like hard, design skills.
Uh-huh.
I made sure I said that in a way that really kind of like at least, made acknowledgement of it. Where as like, yeah, I was working in a marketing team, and we were kind of like a creative agency that did a lot of like blue sky thinking. That immediately clicked with the team with my creative director at the time, because that's what they're like, that's their kind of team.
Okay.
Second thing was mentioning that like I worked I worked with a bunch of video editors and had to like push myself to really understand like how that kind of like process works and how I could speak to them in a way that made sense for whatever we were doing, blah 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 blah.
Okay.
Them as well, because it mentioned like that I've worked on multimedia stuff. So like he wasn't going to be just limited to one or two things.
Right.
And like
Okay.
you want to just kind of like, you want to mention it, because then it gives them the sense of like they can ask questions, and then you can go into more detail about what you've done exactly, this, that, and the other thing. But I mean, all of this is to say, like, while you're prepping for this, whenever this interview is, you should take the time and bullet out some of these things, and you should
Yeah.
kind of like figure out how you want to like orientate them. Because
Mhm.
I mean, listen, like at the end of the day, if this is really a job that you want, you do want to be prepared a bit. You don't want to kind of hang up on just sort of like winging it, and you lose all of those like kind of valuable points that you can see yourself like in this job.
Mhm. Yeah, that makes sense. I need to, it's not like a script, but I need to like write down, like you said, bulleted notes of like, this is what I've done. Also, like, I think something that I haven't done in the other interviews would just be like they put me on the spot and say, well, what exactly have you done? Like, have you done PowerPoints? Have you done brochures? You know what I mean? I need to write down like exactly like the media that I've done.
And it's good to pull out those, again, same with like your portfolio, and no, we didn't really go over too much of like the website aspect of it, but whenever you have like a portfolio, whether it be a website or a presentation, there's always like 3 underlying projects that are like your top 3 that you can talk about for days because you've done so much of it. And you want to do the same thing with your kind of vast experience or like working on a bunch of different stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I would think it would also be really valuable to get into a bit of like way more about like a bigger, like chunkier campaign or project that you did. So you could talk about like any results that happened of it or how it came about. Like you kind of like, you always want to have that prepared in sort of this idea when you're interviewing as well, because exactly what you're saying, they're going to ask you what you've done, and you don't have that in your head like fresh. You just have that you've worked on everything, and that comes off real soft.
Right. And I've also never had campaign or whatever. I mean, I don't know if I have. I don't think I have like campaign experience, or like large.
Campaign in what sense?
What's that?
A campaign in like what sense?
Like a whole ad campaign, like marketing and all that stuff, like around one central idea, of and then like the analytics behind it and stuff like that, and how we're doing and designing to fit like the audience and things like that.
What have you then describe to me, like what have you done in its entirety? Like with this real estate company, was it just like consistency, like what is the opposing argument of like, yeah, we've never set out to do like a campaign from Q1 to the beginning of Q2, right? Like I get what you're saying there,
Mhm.
but what is your opposing argument of that? Like where would you think to then say that you do have experience in another way? You know, for example, like what I'm guessing is that in that real estate company, it was more about consistency.
Yeah.
So it was always on, you know, like always churning out something because it wasn't so much a start to finish campaign. It was we need to be aware, we need to have people aware all the time, right? Whatever that looks like, right? You need to figure that out.
Mhm.
Because like you're saying, you know, you don't have that experience, and that's fine. Like you don't just yes, you can get it over time and continue working from place to place with that. But you need, if you don't have that experience, you need to be able to present it in a way where it was still valuable to learn. And now you're willing to learn more about this sort of, you know, start to finish campaign rather than always on or something like that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Is there anything you want to go over in terms of website, or like, do you have any other questions you want to fire off? Like, you know, we got 10 more minutes.
I'd love to just go through some of my recent design work and just see if, because like obviously things change and I haven't been in school since 2019. So that design work is kind of dead to me, you know? It's, could I rework it? Yes, but also I haven't touched it in years. So like going over maybe some of my like just generalized recent design work that I've done.
Sure. Yeah, go for it. You can go ahead and share.
Okay. So like this is where I did like a UI course or whatever. I don't want to go over this because I think it looks like trash, but that was recent. I guess this up here would be the most recent stuff.
Mhm.
And then the other, the other stuff that I showed you, like this stuff.
See, what I think you're doing here is already better than what you currently have on your website. So this is why that's why I said before, like there's some about you that's just kind of screaming art director, you know, like because you're kind of going like everything you show me here, unfortunately, kind of falls under like exercise. What I'm going to call quote unquote exercise, which just means like you had this idea, you wanted to put it like pen to paper, you did it, and like now you're presenting it as like the thing that you're missing is why did you do it, right? What about it was clicking for you, or why did you feel the need to make this thing, right? Like that's what I'm missing, and that's what happens when you have your portfolio like this. Everything kind of just comes off as like, yeah, I'm showing that I can pump out consistent like visual aesthetic, and I can do it really fast. That's what I get from this.
Okay.
So until you were to like, in that same way we just talked about campaigns, same thing with like this idea of a case study. A case study can be a campaign.
Yeah.
It's the same thing of like, you know, I really admire Athlete. I think their editorial imagery is amazing. I wanted to create a campaign that spoke to more about this theme or this topic. And so this is, and then you would like describe everything in there. And the same thing, like whether you put this, like make this for the interview or not, you're still going to have to prepare it in the same way, like whether it's on note cards or whatever, and be able to think about it and talk about it. So same thing, right? Like, so if you were a photo editor, like complete photo editor, and you go back to your homepage, and even this to some level too, like these pages don't really differ for me. Like if all you tell me that you're a photo editor and I look at those two pages, I'm just going to think everything that's a photo you had something to do with, not so much the text or not so much the design or anything like that. So I think like,
I mean, that would be true.
There's a moment for you here where you're kind of also needing to like update what you're going for. Instead of just showing imagery, you need to show thought and process and articulate that. And you need to show that in like a consistent view rather than just having the 4 top photos all be the same, you know?
Yeah. I think the one thing as far as the photos go, I get what you're saying as far as like I would love to show like my process and like why I did things what way, and like, you know, like in this photo, like why I chose to keep like the light going this way or something like that, you know. I can't share like the befores.
Sure. But I mean, this is what I'm saying. This is why I think you need to start thinking of yourself as a bit of an art director that has somewhat, a skill in design and photo editing,
Okay.
because you can articulate all of that. And what you're saying is you would love to be able to do that. Like that is what an art director does. The art director is thinking about light and how to frame the image and like what's then going to be best. How do we add text? Like what are we doing? Like that's what you're doing. And I'm not saying like you don't need to like go for graphic design jobs if you don't want, but like it's just happening in that sense where you have these both experiences and they're now converging and you're finding it hard to present one or the other. So I would just think of myself in that way, whether you're going for art, design job or photo editor job.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, you need to articulate those pieces because again, it shows you're thinking visually and you're thinking ahead. And I think that's really valuable. Like, yeah, the reason why you kept the beams in that one photo, it was because the light really drives you down, drives the eye down or something. Great, write that down, get it out. And instead of having, if you were to redo like a portfolio with this mindset, instead of having all the images from one shoot, if you wanted to include any of this architectural stuff, unfortunately, like that's a really far jump from like design, but as an art director, it's not so much.
Yeah.
You need to like, combine all those into like, I would say like one or two homes or one or two projects and really build out like, how do I get people to understand that I'm really good with photo and I'm really good with organizing information.
Mhm.
Like that's where you're at.
Okay. That makes sense.
Because I mean, these are great, but at the end of the day, me being a designer, quote unquote, interviewing you for design role, there is a confusion there a bit. And
Mhm.
maybe this is not maybe you don't send them this all the time. I mean, listen, it's working out for Alphalete and it sounds like they have a bit of a hunch in a similar vein as I do, where they're like, yeah, this guy can do editorial, he can do photo, he can do text. We probably have something that would fit right for that. So let's have a conversation with him and see what he wants to do.
Mhm.
But everything else after this, that is going to continue to be a gap that you need to figure out how to fill.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that's where I went wrong in my like first two interviews was just like, because I kept thinking to myself like every time I would see like their website or look up, you know, about their company or anything like that, or, you know, prep myself for the interview, I was just like, oh, they need better imagery here, or like, why are they using this text with this imagery and stuff? You know what I mean? Like I kept thinking about the imagery as well as the design of the page and stuff like that.
And maybe that means that to actually format these to make sense is in that lens of, okay, I'm going to make up a project where we're using these photos for a magazine spread or something,
Yeah.
or an ad or something, whatever. Like, yeah, more hypothetical work, but at the end of the day, like, again, your problem is you're not connecting those two skill sets. You have a gap and you're showing them both separate lenses. One is like, yeah, I was doing photo editing. Now I've like moved on to just doing design work with photos. There's no in between right now that I think would actually add to like you presenting your work and your experience.
That makes sense.
And this is crazy too. I didn't even notice that there was a part that this was a part too. Client testimonials and featured in this. There's so much. I just thought this was the page almost. So I think again, like I could just see your website being like a big ass image at all times, flashing through with like an about you, about what it is you do.
Hmm.
This idea of design and photo direction, and then having a couple of things that link to like different pages of how you did it or a specific project, whatever it may be. But I just don't like this visual presentation of like everything is gridded. They're
Yeah.
all beautiful interior photos, and it makes me think that it's almost like an Instagram feed, so I'm just like,
Yeah,
boop, cool.
that makes sense. Yeah, because you
When's,
really don't. What's that?
when's the interview?
Tuesday. It's a phone call, so it's just like an initial, like, hello, you know.
Perfect. Well, that's even better because then it gives you more opportunity to hear what they're looking for and then figure out the best way to present those skill sets.
Yeah,
They're going to ask you questions, you're going to ask questions, and this is kind of like diffusing a bomb. Like, we need to figure out like where they see me before I can tell them what is I can do to make it better.
right. I don't. How much time do we have left?
Just a couple minutes.
Okay. Um. Here is. Where's Zoom? Here's the job description. So I guess this would be what they're looking for,
Mhm.
And it's got a little bit of all of that in it, like create product imagery by editing, retouching, and mocking up designs. So like they're like clothing and stuff like that. Digital marketing, social media graphics, collaborate with other creative marketing team members, assist with photography shoots and product styling.
All right, so it doesn't sound like anything crazy that you can't do, right?
It doesn't, and it sounds like everything I have done before.
So some key questions to never be afraid to ask are like, what is the problem that this role is going to solve? Like, where do you see this role being the most valuable to you? And again, like, it's not a definitive before or after, at the beginning of the conversation or at the end of the conversation, there's a line to walk, but understanding like when it's a good time to present that.
Uh-huh.
And I think if I had to guess, like, they're gonna tell you, you're gonna jump on the call. They're gonna tell you a little bit about what they're looking for. They're gonna ask you to go into your experience, which again, opportunity to tell them the photo to design sort of like, evolution.
Mm-hmm.
And then perhaps after that description is the moment where you see, where you ask like, what is this position really going to, like, how is this going to help the team? Like, where is the big problem right now that you guys really need to focus on or are really focusing on?
I like that. That's a good question.
It's diffusing a bomb. And at the end of the day, like, when you're speaking with other creatives, it's great because sometimes traditionally it's just like, okay, cool. Do I get along with this person? Right. And that's super helpful if you guys get along on the call, but also if it clicks for them where like you're going to be able to give your hands, like add an extra pair of hands to them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's what people are usually looking for. It's like, finally, I've been complaining that we need to hire, we got the budget, now I need to get someone in to do the work. And it sounds like it's going to be more hands-on, like doing that stuff as well. So then the opportunity is like showing that you also have the eye for photography. And so that when they check your work or review it, it's going to be a smoother process.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Any other questions or anything like that?
Can I keep this recording or no?
Yeah, so I'm working on, after this call, I have one more client call, and then I'll send you an email. It might take like a few days because
Okay.
I'm now funneling this process into like a document that'll have the link, it'll have all the notes from this, and you can watch it. So what will happen is after this, you'll get like an email, just like with like 3 questions on just how you kind of saw the review,
Mm-hmm.
and it'll ask you if I can like share this on my website as well. So
Cool. Yeah, it was definitely very helpful and insightful. And I definitely wouldn't have seen, I didn't see that coming, and I didn't see connecting the two coming. You know what I mean? So
I'm glad you're seeing the light now.
yeah.
Like I said, you'll get an email after this. If you have any questions over the weekend before the interview, or like you want to stay in touch, feel free to send me a note. You have my email, all right?
Yeah, awesome.
Awesome, CJ. Good luck. Stay in touch and have a good weekend.
Appreciate it. Will do. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.